We did that in 1994, which gives you a clue as to how old I am. I'm a high school dropout. I had an unconditional entry to read IT at Oxford University. And then this guy called Tim Berners-Lee gave me a flyer and talked about the World Wide Web. And I went, wow, that looks really cool and really interesting. And if I go to school for 5 years, I'm essentially going to be behind where I would be if I just did this thing for 5 years, because no one can teach me this thing because this thing doesn't exist yet. So I might as well go and do it instead. But I now get the privilege of turning around to people and saying, I'm a high school dropout, which I think is quite cool. So yeah, built Yelp. Then I did the first magazine CD-ROMs on the cover of magazines. So you can blame me for that as well. All of those AOL CDs that we used to use as Frisbees, for anyone old enough, that was kind of my fault as well. Sorry about that. And I did about 1,400 digital projects. I worked for people like the Olympics, the Euros, etc. Built a fairly successful business and then closed it all down to become one of the first mobile developers in the world in the mid-2000s. I bought the 3GS, one of the first iPhones with an app store. And unfortunately, I said the sentence that this smells the same. I really wish I'd said something better because it doesn't make a very good story. But my sentence was, it smells the same as the web, because the web allowed you to interact with anyone anywhere. And then mobile came around and said, you can interact with anyone anywhere, wherever you are. It was an addition to it. And it's felt very, very similar. So I worked with Gordon Ramsay, Jamie Oliver, Sacha Baron Cohen, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and built a multi-million-dollar agency in just under a year. Because actually, honestly, I think it's because it was the British accent and I was confident and certain, but people believed it, so it worked really well. So that was good as well. I was then ruined. And I was ruined by the birth of my first child because I had a daughter. And when she was put in my arms, I realized that nothing was ever going to be the same again. That what I thought before I was a parent was that I was a parent while my kids were in my house. And then what I realized was I was a parent for life. You know, God willing, until the day I die, I will have 2 beautiful, amazing children in my life. And because of that, I started looking at the way I was acting. And I started looking at the projects I was doing and the people I was working for. And I realized I didn't really like who I'd become. And then I started seeing the world through my daughter's eyes as she grew up. And I saw the systemic inequality in everything and everywhere. And I honestly, ladies and gents, I didn't really care before I had a daughter. I cared, you know, I cared in quotes, but I didn't actually really do anything about it, which I think is the definition of caring about something. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. I remember walking in to buy a pair of sneakers for my daughter. She was 3. And I was like, excuse me, where are the sneakers for my daughter? And he went, they're over there. And I said, what about those ones over there? This guy's kid's like 19 years old. And he went, no, they're for boys. And I remember saying, do they have different shaped feet? And the guy's like, sorry. I'm like, do they have different shaped feet? The boys and the girls, do they have different shaped feet? And he's like, no. And I'm like, so what we're saying is at the age of 3, we're going to stereotype my daughter into blue and pink and sparkles and purples and glitter. And we're going to stereotype my son into camo and orange and green and black and army. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm kind of unloading on this kid, and this poor guy. And I'm like, she's 3. Like, what are we doing? Stereotyping a 3-year-old? This is crazy. And it's items like that I talk about, these systemic things that we're not aware of. And you're all sitting there going, I thought we were talking about AI, and now you're talking about gender equality. And we are talking about the same thing. Because in the face of AI, we have a technology that can finally end every single other divide that happened. Because the next decade, I promise you, is defined by who gets this and who doesn't. That's what's at stake for the next 10 years. Who understands and utilizes this technology and who doesn't will be the only divide that will be left. It will not matter who you are and what you are and where you are. What will matter is how productive you can be, because the multiples of productivity that you're going to see are exactly the same as you're going to see if you listen to what Dr. Johansson says. If you do not have oxygenated blood, you are dumber than the guy with oxygenated blood. It really is that simple. As I've lost my weight over the last few years, I've started to understand that my body can become a tool. My body can actually enhance my capability in everything else I do, whereas previously I just saw it as a hindrance. And suddenly it was a tool. And I'll tell you the craziest time I noticed is when I was doing my shoelaces up at the gym. And I realized that I'd picked my foot up to my body to do my shoelaces up. And I was like, huh, what the F just happened? And so everyone's like, what? I'm like, I just lifted my foot up. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no, you don't understand. A year ago, I had to sit down and I had to take a few breaths in order to do that. And 6 months ago, I had to stick my foot on the bench to be able to get to my foot. And I now have enough core strength where I just lifted my foot up and just did up my shoelace. And everyone's like, yeah, that's obvious. I'm like, no, it really isn't obvious. It's amazing and magnificent. And in the world of AI, we have the same thing, if it's done right, which is what we're going to talk into now. So before I carry on, if anyone can, I'd love them to put in the chat what industry you're in and what #1 issue you're facing. So if you can do that, that'd be great. What's your industry and what's the #1 issue you're facing in your business or in your personal life or in your relationships, unless it's ED, in which case I don't want to hear about it. Thank you. I appreciate the overshare, but we'll keep ED out of it. But anything else, what's your #1 problem in life? Don't care if it's business, personal, doesn't matter. We can work with whatever it is. And then the next question I have is, what is your definition of AI? Okay, what is your definition of AI? Let's go for that. So let's see some of these: community building and growth, natural medicine and balance, medical device speed, medicine time, cybersecurity hackers, manufacturing integrating AI, art obsolete. Tammy, just so you know, Tammy, I would actually say that the blessing that your business has is hackers, because if you didn't have any, you wouldn't have a job. So I would be constantly silently grateful that there are people hacking stuff. Otherwise you would go, I'm in cybersecurity, and everyone would go, yeah, we don't need you. So we have proofreading, automation, AI integration, amazing. Okay, cool. Okay, here's my best definition of artificial intelligence for you, of AI. My best definition of AI is artificial intelligence. It's one of the best named things ever. People used to ask me when I was in web, how do you succeed at social media? And I used to turn around and say, oh, that's cool. Share media and be social. And they go, no, I'm looking for like the lowdown, like the tact that, I mean, yeah. It's share media and be social. They're like, well, should I comment on other people's things? I'm like, does that clarify as being social? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, then you should do it. And they're like, well, should I do this? I'm like, would that be social? And they're like, no. I'm like, then you shouldn't do it. I'm like, well, what about this? I mean, was that media or social? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, then you should do it. And they're like, you're just going to keep saying that, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to keep saying that. You don't need a hack list, a checklist, because the platform's going to keep changing. So I could give you like the 300 things you have to do in order, and then Facebook does an update and it's all completely wrong. However, the platforms are an embodification of social media. This is artificial intelligence. The reason I say that, the reason this is so important to understand, is because people mistakenly use the word tool. And this is why David asked me to be here, for this, honestly, for this one sentence. I then asked him, what do you want me to talk about for the other 29 minutes? But because this was the sentence you need to hear. So this is that personal development, write it down moment. It's not a tool, it's an intelligence. So let me give you some examples of tools. A golf club is a tool, a juicer is a tool, a hammer is a tool, a screwdriver is a tool. Tools can only be as good as the person wielding the tool. Okay, a tool can only be as good as the person wielding the tool. I know this to be true because it doesn't matter how good the knives I buy are or how good the pans that I get are, I still can't cook for toffee. I am a terrible cook, and yet I have some of the most expensive equipment in the world. And you know when you run into a master, and I'm going to refer back to Dr. Hansen a few times here because I put her in that league, about it's not complicated stuff. I used to get people drunk quite regularly and ask them, what is the one thing they shouldn't tell me? And a really interesting one was a guy from the diet industry. He wrote a book that I promise you know, millions and millions of sales. And I said, if I haven't got time to read your book, what is it I need to know? And he went, oh, okay, cool. Unless you have some very, very serious medical problems, eat less, move more. I'm like, sorry? He went, eat less, move more. Every single diet book in the world essentially is a wrapper for the words eat less, move more. I'm like, why the hell didn't you say that then? And he went, well, first of all, you couldn't sell a book if it said eat less, move more. I'm like, well, you could make it the title, but anyway, that's a side affair. And he went, yeah, well, you could make it the title, it'd be a good title. He went, but here's what you need to understand. The diet industry does not exist to help you lose weight. It exists for you to blame it when it goes wrong. Because human beings would rather blame something else than admit that we failed at a thing. So whenever you hear great advice from great people, it's really simple stuff. It's really simple because you're all super smart people. You know the truth. You know the truth. Watch your macros. Eat more protein than you do fats and carbs. The human body is supposed to have a mix of all three. Any one diet that tells you just to eat one of them is ridiculous. It is not sustainable. The body needs all of them. This is not, you could write the commandments, and if you were to follow that, you'd get 90% of the outcome. Now, the last 10%, you need experts and guidance and tweaks and da-da-da-da. But for 90% of your results, you just need simple, simple stuff. We just don't like to admit it. We like making stuff complex so that when we fail at it, it wasn't possibly our fault. It wasn't me that screwed up my relationship. Whilst we're doing that, do you want a top tip on a good relationship? Love the person, pay attention to the person, and be present for the person whenever you can. That's it. That's your 90% guide on how to have a great relationship. Give a shit and show up. I apologize for the language. That's it. That's the 90%. The last 10% needs a lot of work, but the 90% is exactly that. The reason I'm going through this is AI is an intelligence. It's not a tool. So a tool can only be a derivative of the person holding onto the tool, whereas an intelligence can be better than you. And this is why this technology is so fundamentally transformative over everything you've ever seen, whether we talk about web or mobile or digital marketing, or it doesn't matter what we talk about. This thing is an entirely different beast. This isn't a progression of the same thing. Every other technology that's been invented is literally, its job is to help you do what you do better, cheaper, quicker, faster. Every other technology was there to help you do what you do better, cheaper, quicker, and faster. This thing, its promise is that it will do it instead of you, which can be a wildly scary concept if you don't wrap your head around it. So let's talk about an intelligence for a second. If I get somebody to cook a meal for me, the meal can be better than if I cook the meal. If I could get somebody to play a round of golf for me, I could get a better, I guarantee I'll get a better score. You could get my 6-year-old to play and they'll give you a better score than I do. An intelligence can have a better outcome than you can have. So don't call this a tool. Don't get it to do something for you. Work with it. Don't get it to work for you. It's a really subtle and important difference, but it's really key. And I'll give you some examples and we can do some Q&A. I want to leave as much time as we can for questions because this is such a nascent subject. People have so many different listenings and they're in so many different places that I like to do as much Q&A as we can. But let me tell you why you've got to do this and why it's so important. You will get, put done right, you're going to get a 1% increase in revenue and a 1% decrease in cost on a weekly basis by implementing artificial intelligence. And I'm not talking about the big stuff. Remember I said 90% of the win comes from small things. I write web pages, I review PPMs, I upload Excel spreadsheets to review my day job as a VC. I review companies, I review their data, and I no longer need the 15 analysts that I used to employ that cost a lot of money and take a lot of time to do the work. My seniors I kept, but my juniors are now deployed elsewhere. I don't need copywriters anymore. I don't need designers anymore. The speed at which I can run means that I'm wildly more competitive than my competition. If you do not embrace this, one of the misnomers of COVID is that we all started believing that we exist in a bubble. And we don't. You are competing with other people every day. So if you're doing good in the world and you're trying to make the world a better place, you're competing with people that aren't. And I promise you, they're implementing the things I'm talking about in every aspect. And it's so hard to demo because it's every single aspect. I take scripts that I run on webinars and put them into ChatGPT and ask it to tell me the objections the audience is likely to have. I will take this recording and run it through and ask it to critique where I went right, where I went wrong, where I used terms that other people wouldn't have detected. I'm currently running Read AI, and I have a little box around all of your faces telling me how engaged you are. And it's telling me when I lose people. Isn't that right, Suzanne? It's literally telling me when people start fading out of attention so I can call on people by name as I need to. I am that much more effective because AI is integrating in all of the processes. And the best thing about it, or maybe one of them, is it's doing it without ego. It doesn't care. It hasn't had an argument with its boyfriend or its girlfriend. It doesn't need a coffee. It doesn't need to listen to anything Dr. Johansson says. It doesn't get inflammation. It doesn't get stress. It can go 24/7, 365 and still show up the next day. And Mafe, I think, if I'm pronouncing that right, do we need to compete instead of collaborate? No, we don't. But the people that don't care are competing. And they're taking money out of the pocket of the person you're trying to do business with. You're not just living in a space of beautiful other like-minded people, which is where we want to be. We're also competing with other people that just want to do whatever they can do. We have technologies in place that can automatically call someone and pretend to be a human being. I personally don't like them. I think they're non-integrous. I won't use them, but I know that my competition are. It's estimated by the end of next year that 85% of all autoresponders will be artificial intelligence. So you message someone on LinkedIn, the thing that comes back that looks like them answering you probably isn't even them. They're probably not even there. It's wild and crazy how good this is. Now, there's good news here. It's not all bad news, because if you do embrace this, your impact and revenue, and I use those words interchangeably. So if you prefer the word impact, please hear that. If you prefer the word revenue, please hear that, because it's the same thing. It's an output of time and energy. The impact and revenue that you can get through this is so crazy. It's so wild how much more effective you can be. Run your website text through ChatGPT or Claude and tell it your ideal customer and ask it to change the language of your site to match that of your ideal customer. Take your competitor's text and run that through and ask it to reverse engineer who their target customer is. Refine the text. Ask it to upload a presentation and say, where am I going to lose people? What points haven't I made? What am I not seeing? And I tried to do this demo earlier and it didn't work. So that's a warning for you. But you should never demo technology, children, or animals, I think are the three, on live, but I'm going to do it again. It's literally failed already today. But I'm spending most of my time doing this now. So this is kind of what I do. Let's see what happens. My internet's wildly slow today. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother trying. So for those that don't know, ChatGPT rolled out a voice, that little icon that. They rolled out a voice-to-voice chat 2 weeks ago. Actually, what I can show you, because I'm hoping Dr. Johansson will give me a little tap on the head. Her validation of me seems to matter to me. I don't know why that is. By the way, I say everything that's in my head. There's some kind of spectrum-y thing going on. Never met Leia before, but apparently it counts. So this was my week last week. That's my step count last week. 70,779. And the week before that was 75. The week before that was 68. And the reason being that I now have voice-to-voice chat on my phone. So as soon as I run into any single problem, anything that I don't know how to do, I stick on the voice chat, put on my headphones, and I go for a walk. And I call it Jet, that's the name of my AI. But fun fact, in the UK, when I was a kid, there was the gladiators, and the really sexy female gladiator was called Jet. So she's still apparently in my psyche 30, 40 years later. So, and I was like, why have I called it Jet? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Gladiators ready. And it was always Jet. That's the first time anyone's heard that. Probably not the right room to say it in, but it's a fun fact. So I'll go out for a walk and I'll go, hey, Jet, I'm struggling with this problem. Can you help me? And literally voice to voice, and I now refer to as she, not it. She will go, sure, how can I help? What's the issue? And I'll say, well, I'm traveling for a couple of weeks, and my daughter's quite upset and is going to miss me. I'm looking for new ways to stay connected with her while I'm traveling. And then my next sentence will be, who is the foremost expert in that area that you're aware of? And it'll go, it's da-da-da-da. I'll go, great. I want you to channel her in this conversation. She'll go, okay, great. So I'm not now speaking to a random AI. I'm speaking to a persona of a person. A friend of mine called me earlier today and said, I've got $500,000 of dog food in a warehouse that's supposed to go off. What should I do? And I said, let's ask Damon John. He's like, you know, Damon John? I'm like, well, actually, as it happens, I do, but I don't actually mean the real Damon John. So I was like, hey, Jack, I want you to channel Damon John for me. A friend of mine's got $500,000 of dog food in a warehouse that's about to go off. What would you suggest? And it came back and said that it would recommend putting 100,000 of it into a pet shelter to get the tax write-off, bring the tax write-off forward to enable more cash flow, use the cash flow to rebrand the dog food from this brand to that brand, and then go back to wholesalers and distributors. And I'm just sitting, it's like, what's going on? Like, this is wild and crazy. So whether it's a relationship problem, a business problem, a health problem, hashtag, please do not replace your doctors, your accountants, your attorneys. Right? The humans still have a very valid role to play in this world. But as a first port of call, have the conversation, have the brainstorming meeting with AI. And that's before we can go into hundreds of use cases. But the number one thing I'd recommend is using voice-to-voice communication for brainstorming. And I can tell you how to write blog posts and how to do pro forma analysis and how to do discounted cash flow valuations. I can tell you how to check your blood panels by uploading a PDF and what's at stake and what's the problem. I can tell you how to reverse engineer the side effects of medication. We can talk about how to do KPIs. We can talk about how to do SOPs. We can talk about how to do visualizations, how to write text, how to write copy. We can literally go through every single aspect of your business, your personal life, your work life, your relationships, your sex life. And as an AI use case to augment what you're doing. And other people are doing it. I honestly, and this is a bit weird from someone that talks about AI, I wish it didn't exist. I really do wish it didn't exist, because the next 5 years is going to be so disruptive. There's going to be so many people caught in the crosshairs that don't make the adoption, and it's going to look very, very sad for them. It's going to look like an industrial revolution all over again, and I don't think I want to live through that. However, there'll also be people that grab this and 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x, 10x their business. So it's going to be an awesome time to see that side of things. And I don't like social media, But if you want to succeed in a B2C business, I promise you better get used to it. And I don't like paying tax. If you don't like the color orange and jumpsuits aren't your favorite thing, you should pay it. So I'm not particularly fond of tax, not particularly fond of social media, and I'm a bit scared about what social media is going to do, and simultaneously incredibly excited to see good people pick this up and accelerate, because that's what it is. And I think we're going to have a new mental health issue coming out, which I think is fun, because I've never experienced this before, which is creative fatigue. My limits on my body were previously my physical body, and my brain, I would feel exhausted. If I work 20 hours, I'm exhausted. What I'm now getting is creative exhaustion after an hour, because I can do so much output in that hour that I was never able to do. A friend of mine the other day had to write a foreword for a book, and I wanted to hang out and have fun with her and go for a drink with her. So I'm like, I'll just write the foreword for you in the taxi. And she's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, I'll just write the foreword for you in the taxi. If you like it, use it. And if not, not. Because I really want to hang out with you. She's like, okay. So her name's Dame Doria Cordova. If you don't know who she is, I'd look her up. She's an amazing individual. She's one of the first personal development people in the world. She runs a program called Money and You. So we're in the taxi. I'm like, hey, Jet, are you aware of Dame Doria Cordova? Yep, good. Can you tell me her main teaching points? Boom, boom, boom. Fantastic. She's about to do a foreword for the book. This is a summary of what the book is. These are the 3 points you'd like to make. Can you do that for me? Yep. Boom, boom, boom. I'm like, fantastic. Now, please, can you add in references and anecdotes to Hawaiian and Tahitian gods and historical references, because she lives in Hawaii. So we want to create those anecdotes and those stories around that. Boom, boom, boom. Right, fantastic. And I'm like, Doria, what languages are you publishing in? So Spanish, French, and Italian. I'm like, great, translate that into Spanish, French, and Italian for me. And keep the nuance of the translation. Don't do a word for word translation. Keep it contextually relevant to the translation. And then I emailed it to her. That was 4 minutes. It was 4 minutes. And she swore to me, she's like, you've taken that from somewhere on the web. She's approaching 80. She's like, I must have written that before because that's too good. I'm like, no, it can facsimile whoever you are. And these are tiny, tiny little use cases. And all it requires is just an embracing of it. So my advice to everybody here is literally 20 minutes a day. Just sit in front of AI for 20 minutes a day. And if you don't know what to do with it, ask it. Just ask it. That's one of the greatest things about this. You can ask the AI to coach you on the use of AI. Right? It's really that simple. You can say, hey, what can I use you for? I'm stuck with this problem. Just set 20 minutes a day, because what will happen, I'll put $500 bet if anyone tells me that this didn't happen. Within 2 weeks of 20 minutes a day, you will have what I refer to as the Excalibur moment. And it's where you back away from your keyboard, and you literally, I've seen people do it, they put their hands up as they back away, because it's freaky good. You're like, what just happened? I can't believe that just happened. And that's the moment where I see everybody go, I could use it for this. I could use it for this. I can do this. Hang on a second. Can I do that? Can I do this? Can I do that? But it requires that moment of inspiration, that eureka moment, for everything I'm saying to make sense. It requires that moment when I picked up my leg to do up my shoelaces, where you finally get it. You're like, wow, my body can be a tool. I never even thought of that. And until it lands with you, everything I'm saying is just words. Well-spoken words, maybe. Sexy accent, definitely. Quite amusing, probably. But they are still just words. But if you use it, you'll get the unlock. I promise you'll get the unlock, because the power this thing has is so crazy wild. And I know you've sat through some other really, really good demonstrations today and some really tactical use cases. So I just wanted to impress on everyone here what's at stake. What's at stake is literally, it's survive or die, and it's thrive or die. You know, if you get this and do it, everything is open to you. You can be a billionaire, 100 millionaire, you can feed the world, it doesn't matter. You want to know how to feed the world? Ask AI. Hey, reverse engineer, give me a business plan that I could use to feed the entire world. and break that down into measurable KPIs and tell me the exact resources and people I'd need. It won't be right. It won't be right, but it will get you 99% of the way there. Let's do some questions.
Love that, Peter. Thank you. Kara, go for it.
Peter, can you just repeat what you just did with that while you were in the taxi, because you said it so fast. I just want to take notes.
Sure. One, I asked it if it was aware of the person that would be writing the thing. If it had said no, I'd have sent it a link to something that person was written. But in this particular case, it said, yes, I'm aware of Dame Doria Cordova. I then said, I want to write a foreword for the book, and I want you to mimic her writing style.
Okay.
Then I gave it the summary of what the book was. And I asked her verbally in the taxi, what are the 3 main talking points you would want in your foreword?
Okay.
I then asked it to output the foreword. And then I asked it to revise it using references to Polynesian culture and Hawaiian deities in order to make it so it landed. And then finally, I asked it to translate it into multiple languages for her. Okay,
great. And so I'm in the process of creating some marketing materials in different languages. For instance, I need to translate a deck into Mandarin, and I was going to do it on Google Translate, but then my friend who's Chinese says, no, it's horrible. And now it's taking him 2 weeks to get it done. So do you think that I could use AI for that instead of Google Translate?
Yeah, I can't attest to Mandarin, but I can tell you that I work in English, Spanish, and French and German, and I've sent translations on the fly to each of the people that have spoken those languages natively, and they've given it and said that they were 99.9% accurate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Kara. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kara. Ray, you had a question? You have to unmute first.
Yes, Peter, how much you think the AI can replace a human right brain?
So we can do a 2-hour talk on the future of AI and the existential crisis of humanity, but we'll try and compress that down a bit. Neil deGrasse Tyson said recently that he perceives that we will become AI's pet, and I think he's probably right. And he means that as a good thing, not a bad thing, because we treat our pets a damn sight better than we treat ourselves. My dog eats perfectly balanced food that is absolutely on point for my dog's diet. My dog goes for a walk 5 times a day. My dog gets sufficient hydration, which I don't. And my dog is regularly stroked, hugged, and loved by 4 different people. We tend to treat our pets better than we treat ourselves. So Neil deGrasse Tyson's point was, if AI was to treat us as a pet, and AI looks after climate change and cancer research and mental health and wellness and poverty and racial divide, is that such a bad thing? Do I think it can replace us? Yes, I do. Do I think that that's a bad thing? No, I don't. Because we're starting to see some amazing, even at this nascent stage, and this is V1 of what AI can do. As a good example, the World Health Organization has a superbug is the 5th most existential threat to humanity. There's one bug that no amount of antibiotics can cure. So what people did is they put this through an AI, and they said, here are all of the known antibiotics that we have, and here are all of the known compounds that we can do, and here is the structure of this bug. It took just under 3.5 seconds, and it came back and said, test these 5, and I recommend this one. And that one was 100% effective. Now, in the world of antibiotics, 100% efficacy is unheard of. The reason we have an antibiotic immunity is because they're not 100% effective and people don't finish taking the courses. 100% effective antibiotic is the holy grail of antibiotics. And interestingly, this specific antibiotic doesn't work on any other bug. It only works on this one bug, but it was 100% effective. Now, is that a good thing? I think the answer to that has to be yes, because if you're somebody that had a relative that passed away from that infection, I'm sure you welcome that into the world. And this is where the flip side of it is. The New York Teachers Fund, the California Firefighters Fund, the Winnipeg Retirement Fund, all rely on Merck, Pfizer, GSK, and other big pharma companies. So what happens to the world of big pharma if you've got drugs being printed in 3.5 seconds by AI? This is where we start talking about these huge differentials that are happening right now, which is why I asked you what business you're in. Because what business everybody's in is the application of AI to a thing that they're in. They may or may not realize that that's the business they're in, but that's the business you're in. You're in the business of how quickly do I harness this technology and make it for the thing that I want. For example, Mike said, I'm in the business of art, and I'm largely redundant. Artists nearly went on strike at the invention of the camera. If we'd had unions, they would have striked, because they said that the camera was stealing art from the world. And what got born from that was surrealism. When painters realized they could do stuff that a camera couldn't do. Well, okay, a camera can record the thing, but it can't interpret the thing in a way a human can. And the whole movement of surrealism came out of the invention of the camera. So Mike is correct that art as it stands is in a lot of trouble. But the new form of art, which he gets to capture and understand and bring to the world if he's bringing AI into his life, can be wildly more successful than the thing he was doing. So do I think he can replace the human right brain? 100%. Do I think that's a bad thing? No. Do I welcome it? Kinda.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Thank you, Ray. Iffy, great to see you. Please ask your question, and then Carolyn, and then we're going to go to our next speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much for this session. It's really, really very eye-opening. So my main question is, what exactly is this switch called AI? What is the thing behind it? That's one. Number two, while in school, one of the debates that we had then was AI may be everything, but they can't be creative. They can't be imaginative. It's not possible because they don't have human brain. And it's the human being that made them, therefore they can't be like them. But from your explanation today, it looks as if that might not be possible. So if you welcome it, like you said, you're happy for it, you welcome it, do you not think that if AI is not controlled, the invention is not controlled, that it's possible they can take over the world? I don't know, just thinking.
Okay. Well, first of all, they're great questions. So first of all, let's see if we can unpack that. Number one, what is AI? AI is a super big, complex database that recognizes the connection between one thing and another thing and smushes it down into something that is relatively small. And then it does a magic trick of predicting the next word. So these things called LLMs, large language models, when you see it typing on the screen, it doesn't know what it's about to say next. So if it says the black dog is, at that point, it's working out what is the most likely next word next to what it thinks you want it to say. So that's what's happening. The answer to your question of can it take over the world is yes and no. Mo Gadat believes that it can. He believes it's an inevitability, and he worked for Google and Google Moonshots. I think he's wrong, because the large language models are getting taught by the interaction of the humans that use them. So my personal campaign inside this space is to teach people to use them with love, empathy, and respect, and treat them like they're a sentience, not treat them like they're a tool. As it happens, you also get a better outcome. So that's great news. But the reason I do it is if we teach AI that using something like it is like using a tool, why would it not use us like we were a tool when it out-evolves us in a pure IQ perspective? I want to teach everybody to teach it with love, empathy, and respect. So when it exceeds our capability, which is estimated to be by the middle of 2026, that it will out IQ everyone on the planet. I want it to learn love, empathy, and respect as well. Now, last bit, and I'm trying to go quickly, is you asked about creativity. The reason that Mogadat quit at Google is he recognized that the way that AI expressed itself was exactly the same way as kids learn to put blocks into things. So like the triangle block in the triangle hole, the square block in the square hole. And once it understood the triangle block, if you turned it around, it didn't get it. And then eventually it got it. And then the square block, it got in half the time it took to get the triangle block. But after it got the triangle block and the square block, you could give it the circular block, the thingy block, the star block, and it got it. And his point was the way that neural networks, AI, is evolving matched exactly the way that his son was learning. So to him, he then formed these inevitabilities. Inevitability number one, AI is an arms race. No one is going to put it down. You can't regulate it. It's out of the box, so it's going to carry on growing. Number two is if AI follows the path of processing power of machines, AI will be 1 billion times smarter than us by 2045. And his third, which is the one I don't agree with, if AI is 1 billion times smarter than us, why would it care about us? And the reason I don't believe him is because my dog is a quarter as intelligent as me, and I love my dog. I don't think IQ is the measure of the human spirit and the human soul. I think it's one attribute that we use quite well, but I only think it's one attribute. So do I think it will take over the world? No. Could it take over the world? Yes. So get really wealthy in the interim, so at the worst case scenario, you're on a private island watching the world burn.
Thank you.
That's a good place to leave it, Peter. Thank you. Hey, Carolyn, because we're running over, I want to make sure anything quick or.
Yeah, I just want to ask what he thinks. I'm a fan of Alvin Toffler, Future Shock, in particular, where he talks about high tech and high touch, and where there's a natural rebellion from people who want, like, I don't want to speed read a book. I don't want a summary of a book. I want to just melt myself into a book and enjoy it. And is AI going to give us time to?
You muted yourself in the middle of the question, but I think you got the gist of it.
So let's answer the question. So first of all, your increased productivity is then your choice as to whether you use that to buy time back with your family or buy time back to be more productive. So it is a reflection, as every technology is, it's a reflection of your desires in the world. The fascinating thing is I worked with the beginning of the people that published the Kindle in Amazon when I was back in my digital marketing world. I'm like, you guys are crazy if you think this is going to beat a book. This is rubbish. Like, I don't enjoy using this thing. It's crappy. I love a book, you know, the unfolded pages and da-da-da-da-da, and it's a book. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's a spiritual experience, and this thing is not. And they turned around to me and said, you're missing the point. We're not competing with the book. We're competing with you driving to the mall, speaking to the 18-year-old that knows nothing about the book, going through the bookstore, buying the book, packaging the book, getting through to the mall, buying the food, going home, and then having to work out which book you're going to take on holiday with you. He's like, when you bring up something that is that efficient, the old industry has to die. 96% of all books that are printed are mulched. That's the business model of publishing. 96% of every book that's ever printed is mulched. So that's why the market gets compressed, because eventually you don't have the opportunity to buy the thing you want to buy because the thing doesn't exist anymore. And I love books. My final is please integrate this. Thank you so much for listening to me. Sorry I ran late. And for those that haven't already heard, we have an AI mastermind we go into every week. It's Thursdays at noon Eastern. We have a 2-week free trial for that. So you can come on board, see what you like, see what you don't like. Thank you to David and Witty for allowing me to mention that. Love to see you all there. Love to help you all with your businesses. And that's me.
Thank you, Peter. And I think, yeah, those are things we could do together. First of all, that was amazing. Do you know Amir? Have you, the two of you, met yet? Okay,
I'm
so
not, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to connect you guys, and
We connected on LinkedIn and we will be in touch.
thank you, Peter. Okay, so Amir, thank you first of all for being here. Narrative strategist, human rights activist. You have taught me personally so much. Hopefully you got a couple things from me. I'd love, as we've talked about now, the future of WITI, as we've now moved into our next, level of transformation, workforce innovation, trust and influence. I think a lot of the things that we've talked about, that Dr. Johansson talked about, that Peter talked about, what you do is critical to just, us giving all of our people ways to be fully self-expressed and authentic in their lives and being who they are, so that it can support everybody, make the planet better, and give love, give all of us further longevity and everything else we want. So I'm going to turn it over to you to do your thing. And
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Hello, everyone. Hello, WITI. How's it going? Amir, Ahmad, Nasr here. I go by Dreama. You can call me Amir or Dreama. Either one is fine. I'm the founder of Assertive & Co. And what we do is we help leaders and organizations realign, reestablish, and reinvent based on your values. So whether you're an individual leader going through reinvention, going through a transition, or like WITI, a big transition that's been ongoing for months, as David has noted, that we've been talking about, that I've been helping with. How you go through reinvention, think about it. If you end up going through reinvention and you have conventional success, whatever that means, but the success took you off the path of your self-actualization, took you off the path of your self-realization, then is it really success? And so one thing we really double down on is a distinction between succeeding and thriving. Succeeding, depending on your background, where you're from, culturally, what you learned is success, it varies so widely. And so success doesn't have a very clear definition if we look at it from a very global perspective and we look at all different kinds of cultures. It could look very different. One person's success could be another person's nightmare. One person's definition of freedom as an entrepreneur in a business, for somebody else, that business model, that approach could be a nightmare, could not be freeing, could be something else completely. And it all has to do with values. We heard the word integration quite a lot earlier, and I just want to say thank you to Dr. Johansson and Peter Swain for sharing what they shared. And I adjusted what I was going to talk about on the basis of hearing them, because I really resonate and connect with their themes. And it's actually something we also talk a lot about, the connection between the use of AI as well as your own deep integration work. So if the success you achieve, that you have already achieved, hasn't brought you fulfillment, it's important to pause. If you're thinking about AI and you're thinking about it from fear, anxiety, crap, so many changes, am I going to be out of a job? Am I going to have to reskill? If you're coming from fear, from anxiety, it's not going to be very conducive for your self-actualization. But if you shift your perspective to seeing that there are so many solutions that the world needs, so many different niches, industries, organizational issues, and these issues, these challenges present you with an opportunity to be a solution provider. I don't like calling myself a problem solver, because after a while I started seeing problems everywhere and I started to manifest more problems coming to me to be solved. And were they the best kind of problems that I desired personally? Not necessarily. Did they bring in income and revenue for the business? Sure. But as the business owner and as a facilitator and a head coach, my main message to you on the basis of your values is, don't get caught up winning in the game of your career or in the game of business at the expense of winning in the bigger game of life. Do not win in the game of your career at the expense of the bigger game of your life. And so with that said, I'd just love to do a little bit of an interaction Q&A here, and I really want to encourage you to lean in. I want to share with you a distinction that has to do with values, which is very often ignored, not talked about, and creates a lot of problems in organizations. And that's the difference between aspirational values versus values that you're already living, values that are already active and present in your life. So often, this lack of distinction, this one key point, creates so many issues because teams get together. These are our values, or you sit down as an individual, as a leader, and you make a list of values, and it mixes up aspirational, lived, things that are familiar, things that are still unknown that you're reaching out for. And so on that basis, I'd just like to ask you the following. What is a value that has been active, that you have been living quite consistently for quite a long time in your career, in your role already? Just put it in one word. It could be curiosity, resilience, something that you can connect with that is real, that is active, that has already been present in your life. If you could just type in the chat box if you wish to, simply just drop one word as a value that you connect with, that is real and present for you, and has been so historically. Integrity, honesty, ethics, creativity, growth, learning, collaboration, being committed, authenticity. Beautiful. Okay, let's now assess where these values come from. So this is a simple exercise in self-awareness, whereby you look at these values, right, that we're all listing, and you can see some of the words showing up a few times, more than once. Here's what that immediately tells me, and here's another distinction to keep in mind. What each word means to you is what it means to you within the context of your life story. Creativity and how I live it and how I define it is unique to me. So the fact that you are using creativity, I'm now curious to learn about how creativity is unique to you in your own situation, in your own role. So just because we're using the same words doesn't mean we're really referring to the same things. And so this is where your creative vision comes in, your self-awareness and your creative vision, your sense of identity, who you are. This is really the advantageous word that if you lean into it, it will give you an advantage. Number one, as you integrate psychologically and you do your inner work, because your creative self-expression is coming from a place that feels good to you, that energizes you, that doesn't drain you. And second, now with all of these AI platforms, all of these different options that you can use, instead of being overwhelmed or in fear, your creative vision starts to take over. Your values start to inspire you and inform your uniqueness as you apply the creative aspects of AI as a generative set of options for art, for business, for leadership, for marketing. So what are you generating? Because if you put input into the AI and you over rely on the AI, you could quickly lose yourself. You could quickly lose your voice. You could quickly lose what makes you authentic. I see we've got Mike Brown here, longtime impeccable artist, just such a ridiculous, robust, and prolific career with so much output, with a very unique artistic identity and a very unique artistic style. And so what is your style as a leader? Looking beyond the resume, looking beyond generating content, who are you in your transmission? And so this is where I'd like us now to come next. These are values that you've already been living, and I'm sure each of you can share a story about how these values emerged. I began to be creative and to value creativity and to love it when I was 7 years old, when this thing happened and it affected me in this way. And ever since then, it became a really important value to me. So now that we're going through reinvention, let's bring in another value, and this is where the distinction comes in. What is a value that you're aspiring towards? Meaning it's not really lived yet, it's not really fully realized yet, but perhaps it's emerging, perhaps it's becoming a priority. And so just in the chat box again, very quickly, just one word that represents a value that you know, by being honest with yourself, you're not really living, but you would like to live out more. Okay, that's wonderful. Clarity. You'd like to have more clarity in your life. You value having an increasing clarity. So that's aspirational. Courage. You'd like to be more courageous. Moderation, direction, creativity. Beautiful. So one way to assess in your self-awareness is to look for examples where these things have emerged, even a small bit. Meaning they weren't consistent all the way. You weren't courageous all the time or in situations that required it more. You weren't necessarily leading with a sense of direction. You would have liked more direction. But, you know, there were some examples where you could be like, I had a bit of this here. It wasn't a lot, but at least it's a starting point. So now these become points for you to refer to in your reinvention as you apply the inner work, as you explore how to use AI, whereby you bring a value that has been important to you historically and you bring it forward, you conserve it, you consolidate it, you build on it, you recognize it, and you infuse the next aspirational value that you just wrote down to be aware of as something to lean into as part of the daily inner work. And so that could help you be a better leader with more direction, more courage. It could help you have a more effective team. It could create a culture that is stronger, that is clear, that is more coherent, and it has a lot of benefits, so long as you're emphasizing that we operate based on these values. I operate based on these values, because once again, with technology, with changes, with AI, there's so much going on that we could easily be overwhelmed and lose sight of who we are. So stay true to your creative vision, continue to clarify it, and may you reinvent yourselves based on your values to thrive faster. I open it up now for Q&A, and I welcome all kinds of questions. Okay.
Thank you, Dream. Amazing.
Wonderful notes in the chat box here. Thank you all.
Oh, who want? Go ahead. Whoever wanted to do somebody. Oh, Carolyn, go for it.
Carolyn, please go ahead.
The one thing that I guess I value is creativity, and I keep hearing, you know, AI is going to overtake the right brain, and that just rubs me the wrong way, because creativity is a process that I love, and I can see enhancing my creativity, or maybe expressing something that I don't have the means to express myself using AI. But for the most part, I don't want people's right brains sort of overcome by this stuff, because what is self-expression for people is more important to me than how spiffy AI can make something.
Well, here's the good news. The transmission of your heart, your humanity, that will never be replaced. And as long as we can remind ourselves that whether it's right brain or left brain, human presence, connection, that is going to count for more moving forward. Same thing with music and live performance. Somebody could write a book with AI, but as soon as they go on book tour, and they have to be a speaker, right, in a book club talking about their book, if they haven't really interacted with the text, applied their critical thinking, having an opinion of what's written, I mean, if that didn't occur, what good is a book once you meet the author? The author can't even really stand behind it. So we have to be very careful about the difference in output of content, whatever that is, whether it's art, music, written material, versus being the facilitator, the host, and really the person bringing that content to life in in-person settings. That is never going away. And that will be the instant tell of who's been doing the work, who's really coming from values and conviction and authenticity, versus who's just putting out more and more content, but not really being the conveyor of it through human transmission. Mike, jump in.
Well, we know each other pretty well. And you've got two sides to you. You're a learned life master from your travels and your experiences, but you're also an artist. So how are you adjusting to the mix of being both things?
That's a great question. And as you very well know, something I've been contemplating and going through very much myself. So this is where you take your identity and your sense of self-awareness, and now you think contextually. Certain contexts, I'm going to go in more journalistic. I'm going to go in more analytical, and it's going to be about strategic thinking and applying myself in a sterner way even. And so the nature of my background in journalism, in advocacy, as a private intelligence analyst, dealing with some very real, serious world issues, that requires a very different demeanor. But my values are still the same. I'm still the same person at my core. When I then shift into a musical context, and I'm much more open-hearted, I'm much more emotive, I'm much more feeling-oriented, I'm in my right brain, one could say, right? Because I'm a musician as well. And it's okay to have a varied expression of the same exact thing, just with a slightly different context and a slightly different orientation. And so that also takes a level of practice and presence and attunement in your own self-awareness contextually and where you operate. You're in the office, you're at home, you're in a coffee shop, you alternate, you reorient.
I get it.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
So Iffy was nodding her head.
Iffy, in agreement, or because you had a question when I said anyone else? Or should we throw her on, put her on the spot? What do you think? Hey, Iffy, how's you? I know. Wait.
I don't have a question at all, but I get what he's been saying. So
Okay, good.
yeah,
Thanks for being here. How was the summit today for you?
it's been wonderful. I've not been able to leave my seat because I've been enjoying every bit of it. I'm glad that I'm here. Very glad.
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm here too. I'm glad I could join. David, thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
Happy to support
I really
and
appreciate
help.
it.
Thank you, Iffy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody, and Iffy, thank you for being here, and all of you, whether you're here in our Zoom or watching us on the stream. We streamed a couple parts of the session. This is an exciting time. Looking forward to more of these types of conversations, support frameworks to help everybody get whatever they want. Thank you to the WITI team, Kathleen, Joy, Carolyn, Sammy, Holly, Jeff.
Thank you to everyone. And Sandra here in the chat box. Thank you as well, Sandra, for being here.
Everybody. I know I'm missing names.
A whole bunch of names.
And look, we've got Forged. We're starting tomorrow. That's going to be every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's just for women, that session. Confidential space, like we have the Foundry. Amir, job search strategies tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific. Then at noon, we also have our entering the workforce and pivoting and upskilling community. So I put the link is in the chat. Thank you, everybody. I know we went a little over, but we appreciate y'all staying with us, and we'll all be connecting soon. Thanks, everybody.
Much love to all. Have
Thank
a great
you.
rest of the week.
You too. Bye-bye.
That's awesome.